Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you.
Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 96. Today we are concluding our Geiger Volume One retrospective with guest co-host Rob from Comic Book Chronicles. But first, some breaking news. Today is Wednesday, February 18th, and yesterday Ghost Machine made an unbelievable announcement. Let's take a look at the press release. It looks like starting in May, the Rockefellers and Hornsby and Halo are going to be highlighting the new Unbelievables universe. It appears that the Family Odysseys are receiving a new moniker. And they're going to have 0 issues out in May from those 2 series that we already know and love. And then there's a new series coming out called The $1 Trillion Kid. We've seen this up until this point in the adverts that haven't told us much, but we know a lot more now. So it looks like $1 Trillion Kid is going to be a 4-issue miniseries, and it's going to be Ghost Machine's first official crossover event between those 3 books. And it looks like the announcement came with a really cool map. It's reminiscent of the Unnamed Timeline in that it's a world building mechanism that tells us about what's going on, because it's got all different locations in the US, and we see the $1 Trillion Kid logo and the Rockefellers logo, and then the Hornsby and Halo logo, and several other new ones though. And in the press release it reads, among those new characters being introduced are the Dead Tones, a rock band of misfit monsters on the run. The Curious Creatures of Dr. Moreau, because sometimes life needs to get a little wild. And Jean Genie, a genie finally free from her endless existence of servitude and now coming to grips with what freedom means in the modern world. And a whole lot more as seen on the newly revealed Unbelievables map. There's a couple other fun things on there, too. There's one, it's in Tennessee, in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, one of my and Snoggle's favorite destinations. It looks kind of like the Cracker Barrel logo, except it says Invaders, y'all. And there's a flying saucer in the logo there. And then there's one called Holiday Heights and Unbelievable. And there's even one in Boise, Idaho, that says Mad Ghost, and it's even the Mad Ghost logo that we all know and love from the original Kickstarter. So, holy cow, huge news from Ghost Machine. And that's not all. We also have seen the covers out for the 3rd issue of the Ghost Machine guidebook that is apparently going to spotlight the Unbelievables. And we're going to have 3 different covers, one by Gary Frank, one by Brian Hitch, and one by Yvonne Hayes. And all 3 of those, you can find them out on the socials. We have this posted on ours, on Ghost Machine Fans on Instagram, but obviously Ghost Machine Pro has it everywhere that you want to find it. And oh my gosh, it just blows my mind because you can see just how much time and preparation and effort they've been keeping this under wraps. So good on you, Ghost Machine creative people. We had no idea something this amazing was coming. And now, without further ado, we shall resume our Geiger Volume 1 retrospective.
Then that wraps that up, and we're already on the 3rd issue, halfway through this, and it seems like we're going to get a trend, because the first page of the last issue had a little bit of cancer exposition, and they do it again here. But so this is where you get the first hint that something's a little different, and like this is a little more superhero-y, right? Because the doctor says this form of systemic radioisotope therapy is admittedly experimental, Tracy, and so something related to that makes glowing people. It is
a little bit Marvelish in terms of, it's always something radioactive with those folks over there. And we've got a little bit of that with our friend over here.
There's always something radioactive. And that's the interlude to get back to the present, because the present is when he is with Haley and Henry, and he finishes saving them, but then he's just like, get in your car and go home.
He kind of tries to get rid of him.
He does, and like you can understand that. Like his priority isn't them; it's his family who's been in the bunker for 20 years. But when they mentioned that the Knights of Camelot killed their mother, is when it seems to connect with him a little bit more. And I remember the first time I read this, I was a little confused because I was like, wait, are Haley and Henry with him or not? Because then it goes back. Now we have a difference where we shift back in time, and we see an instance where the Knights of Camelot and their henchmen attack his fort, but this is before the king got hurt, so this is also before he meets Haley and Henry. So he's remembering the knights is the significance of this, right?
Yeah, so they shift back to the point where we've got the Knights of Camelot attacking the bunker, and then we've got this highly loaded revelation here.
What do you mean?
Well, with where we find out that Tariq's they open the bunker.
Oh, in the end, yes, in the end, absolutely. Oh yeah, mind blown. There's one small revelation that I like to point out, and that's that as they're attacking, there's an explosion that knocks him out, and he's like not in transformed form. So that to me, when I first read that, I was like, oh, that's his weakness. Like he doesn't automatically transform. Like presumably they could put a gun to his head right now, kill him, and he's not gonna.
Right.
His powers aren't going to activate. But this is also where we see like these night guys. There's like people get really into their hazmat suits in this universe, you know. But ultimately, like
you have to.
It's gonna take time. Like nobody So it must be a status symbol. But he's basically very like whatever. Not really worried about these knuckleheads who are holding him to the ground until they decide that they're going to blow open his bunker.
Yeah. Of course, they get the bunker open and they find skeletal remains. So this bunker that he's been guarding for 20 years at this point has essentially been a mausoleum the whole time, unbeknownst to him. He essentially discovers that it's been a fruitless endeavor, and he gets laughed at by, you said the king's name. We find out his name is Jeremy.
I think we eventually do. I don't think we do in this issue.
Yeah, we don't know. So the king of Camelot sort of laughs at him, and that's where we get Tariq lashing out in anger naturally, and a lot of emotion, and he reaches his hand through the king's hazmat suit and puts his bare hand on this kid's face and disfigures him. It's a really pivotal scene in the pantheon of Geiger, is it not?
It is. It's significant, and that we understand that was when him as a threat to the ecosystem of power of the Las Vegas warlords or whatever really solidified, and people knew he was really out there. Like a lot of the way they talk about him initially is like he was a myth of the desert or something.
Yeah. Originally, I read this and I wondered, okay, it's only the third issue. Why is the king getting his comeuppance now? You know what I mean? But like this happening, fuels the pursuit for him later on, and as the books go on. So you kind of have to have this there in order to give the villains their motivation.
Yeah, you do, absolutely, and some of them really their curiosity, like with what we see with the Goldbeard thing eventually happening, like way later.
Yeah,
and we do get the first time where, and this happens in the ongoing series a few times as well, but some of the Camelot people show up. It looks like it's not even knights; it's just hazmat dudes with bullet belts and armored cars or something. And instead of us seeing another scene of destruction and combat, it's just he takes his rods out and there's a panel of green and then they're flaming and dead. And we see that later in later issues too. It always goes down smooth.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a school of thought where you can say, does that work? But I think in this case they pull it off.
Yeah, they're not very powerful, you know.
Yeah.
But in the end, though, he consents to like helping them essentially because he says, "You said your mom was trying to get you someplace safe. Let me see the map." So you get a sense of his humanity then. But then we turn a corner, and the intro to the 4th issue, which has one of the most memorable covers ever, with that those organ people on the Jeep. Just that's not a comic book cover, man. That belongs in an art gallery.
Yeah, more on the organ people in a bit. I've got a
okay.
But yeah, no, but that's a great, very tense, actiony cover. I like that. And oh my gosh, I just noticed there's somebody getting run over by the frickin' Jeep. Okay, it's funny. It's funny what you notice and what you don't notice sometimes.
And it's the lizard from the Rockefellers.
There you
on the bottom of the page. It's the lizard. Yeah, the lizard that Raina squashes. Runs all the way from Guy. It looks a lot like it, but I mean, it looks a lot like it. I would wonder if there was like a Ghost Machine joke about that.
You know what? If you told me legit that was the same freaking lizard, I probably would have believed you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Gary uses it in a similar way in this, like it's just kind of around, but
yeah.
Neither here nor there. We do right away though we get that tombstone again. That doctor and the way that this is presented, right? We have a panel with the tombstone. Then we have a panel with a guy who's talking to Tariq. And this is after Tariq asks someone, "Why are you helping me, Doc?" And it's him, Doc, the doctor's in a hazmat suit. He's obviously doing stuff with an IV and helping Tariq. So it implies, we'll just leave it there. It implies that tombstone is this doctor. Right. If you read that, do you not? That is the impression you get. Yes.
That's the visual language of what they're doing.
Yes. Yes. And so just remember, this was written by Jeff Johns, who is one of my absolute favorite comic book writers. So I like that. But in comics, that is a way that you can misdirect people that you can't misdirect in any other media and it'd be acceptable. In this, it's acceptable. So I'll leave it at that for now as we go. And then you and I will read Geiger Ground Zero later.
Oh, okay. I'm going to hold you to that.
So that is a little bit, though, where we're like, all right. He had a helper, but we don't get more than that. Because it just goes to the post-apocalyptic hotel thing. And you don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but like it's just this little, looks like a small one-room thing that you can go into where you're protected from radiation. But what I thought was interesting is they're like these pods and there's currency of some kind. Otherwise they wouldn't be able to do this. So there is currency of some kind amidst this post-apocalyptia.
Yeah, clearly they've figured, by they, I mean people in general, they've figured out a bartering system, they've figured out currency. There is still some semblance of order here. It's just a matter of it's really, really not the order that we had before, at least to a large extent. And that's one of the things that's fascinating to me about Geiger kind of being a Trekking Across America series, because you get to see how this war, or the unknown war, affects different areas of the country in different ways and how different people respond to this horrific event. So it's world building, I guess, is the word you would use in this context.
Yeah. Yeah. And they even have above ground power lines that connect to those things somehow. So it's like, I don't know. I like all that. I want, maybe there'll be more of that kind of stuff in the Ghost Machine guidebook to the Unnamed that's coming out soon that you saw.
I saw that. Yeah.
But then there's that amazing 2-pager with the sign going to Arizona and the Jeep going into it. And just an amazing, a lot of people, there was a Geiger TV series potentially a while back, and there was kind of a scene like looked a little bit like that people were talking about. But he's driving Haley and Henry. They're going. They ask him about his origin. He alludes to the accident and his family. But when we really get, as readers, a little bit more focus on Dr. Molotov, like we even get this little interlude where Molotov is telling him, hey, these rods will stabilize your internal temperature. They're made of boron. And so that's like, as a comic book guy, you're like, a comic book person, you're like, yeah, okay, more of that. Powers, how they work, mechanics are cool.
I like that sequence, but to me, what sticks out about that last page in that scene is that we go down and we get this shot of are they called organ people? What are they called?
Organ people, yeah.
Organ people. Okay, he looks a little Tusken Raiderish, but yeah,
exactly.
Yum yum, that kind of thing. I'm a big fan of the organ people. I should say that because it can't be taken out of context in any bizarre way. But no, I like these guys a lot, and I'm anxious to get into what they're about.
That gets just back to the Camelot, though, and this is a pretty interesting one.
Okay.
Because it takes us to, I think his name is Jeremy. I've been saying this the whole time, and watch me be wrong, but it's pretty quick and easy. He goes down like this elevator and sees his mother, who he has like trapped down there. Yeah, no, she says, close that right now, Jeremy, when he opens the window and hits her with the sunlight. So she, like, clearly he keeps her down there, and they call her the monster, but she also doesn't want to be in sunlight. So it's like, what is the deal there? And then you get this really interesting one panel where he says, where did father put the codes, like, to the nuclear stuff? And there's this picture of mom and dad. And she's like, let's just say she's nothing like she's drawn on the page in that photo.
Yeah, no, this is, my kids get up at about 4:30 and 5 in the morning. This woman is what I'm afraid I look like to them that early in the morning. We get the sense that this woman is not living a very sanitary life down here in this bunker, and indeed she does call him Jeremy. So Jeremy is the name. And yeah, so we get the sense of, I guess, maybe how Jeremy wound up in a position of royalty, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing there, but if his father had access to nuclear codes, maybe that's how they were elevated. I don't know.
Yeah. Either way, the family still retains control, is what we do know is for sure. Mm-hmm. And then the world of Vegas and the warlords of Vegas grows because you get some really neat juxtaposition of pirate architecture and boat with pirate slot machine with pirate people, and like fun lady with her arms in the air winning slots, which has always made me laugh every time I've seen that. But we see that Goldbeard and Bonnie Borden are talking, and then they also mention Safari Bob and some of those other things. And I think that we learn a little bit about Jeremy here. I think when she says, I don't believe anything that child says, Goldbeard, but his father was a senator before the war. And I think that's why his father had some sort of nuclear something.
There you go. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I agree with you. This juxtaposition of pirate era Goldbeard walking next to Bonnie Borden, who's from like the 20s. It's really interesting. Okay, so let's say Nick that a bomb drops tomorrow. Okay, so somewhere between Kenosha and Cincinnati, and you have the chance to be a pirate or a 20s flapper or a knight or whatever it is. What character, what era are you going in?
That's a tough one, because I would be like, guys, why are you going to make all this effort to, like, we need function before form? I would, but I get it though.
Let's assume that you have function kind of sort of taken care of, and we're in a position where we can, add some panache.
If we're doing it based on panache,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Well, because essentially that's what happens, right? They build this society around that, and instead of Mad Max and it just being all rabid gangs, this is another way to do that trope, and I think that's cool. Avoiding your question, I think that that's really hard because you'd want to. I wouldn't go Camelot at all.
No, you wouldn't go Camelot?
No, I wouldn't go Camelot because it just seems goofy to me that they have those armored suits, and it doesn't seem practical.
The armor I would think would be too heavy.
Yeah, way too heavy. But who knows how it's made? Yeah, I'm not. I like pirates, and I like gangsters, and I like Bonnie. So that would be tough. I think I would probably do the gangster though, because
I think
it would be closer to modernity. Huh?
I think Snoggle would pressure you to go into the Bonnie Borden era with her.
Yeah.
if I'm being honest.
You're
like
right.
If the wife is happy over in this era, that's the era we're going into.
Yeah. And I guess my other option would be Safari Bob, and I wouldn't be Safari Bob. I wouldn't choose that one. That wouldn't be for me.
No.
Yeah, no.
Nor would I be Safari Rob, quite frankly.
Boom.
There it is.
He grabbed it. It's right there for the taking.
Yeah.
So it seems like our hero, Tariq Geiger, is going to get innocent Haley and Henry to their next, whatever safe destination. But then they get accosted by your new favorite antagonists. So you wanted to talk about these folks, these NPCs, a good bit more. Yes. Yum, yum.
Yeah. Now that I'm looking at them again, they really remind me of the Tusken Raiders, the Sand People from Star Wars, in the sense that they're, all bandaged up and they've got the goggles. I'm not saying that they were going for Sand People, when they created these guys. But no, now that I'm looking at them, it really kind of reminds me of that. And here's the thing that kind of struck me. We get this expository panel where Tariq says, the Oregon people. After the bombs, some people refuse to wear suits, and their inbred bodies and minds are riddled with tumors, so they spend their time hunting for donors. So essentially, these are people who, when a nuclear holocaust broke out, as I understand it, refused to protect themselves and kind of just sort of, maybe if I ignore the problem, it will go away type thing. Does that sound about right, Nick?
Yeah, it's comic booky, but as he's describing it, it's like, man, that sounds really terrible. Most people probably couldn't survive that, but any characters that would make for interesting, combatants. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But the next couple of pages are mainly combat, right? Like it's mainly like a post-apocalyptic road battle, but Tariq doesn't choose to transform. Kind of makes sense because it's like, he's got to drive the thing. So it's
exactly.
He's kind of driven to that point, and eventually, when he does that, he has Haley take the wheel, which she's driven before.
Yeah, you know what? This feels very almost like Indiana Jonesy in terms of the vehicle chase, the suspense, that kind of thing. I like the panel where Tariq, I believe, literally gets stabbed in the skull, or attempts to get stabbed in the skull, and it just the knife melts, and then he strikes back. But yeah, very almost Spielbergian in terms of the tone we're setting here.
Yeah, it's amazing visual as it leads up to the big boom there in the end when the vehicle stops and hits Tariq in his transformed state. Because at that point, the others they're in a separate vehicle. So Haley and Henry are okay. They're in a different Jeep, not the one that explodes.
Right.
But they also don't see Tariq at first. Like, he got hit by the car, and then you see like this crunch and this like, but then that's it, even for the remainder of this issue, because as Haley and Henry are walking up and looking, there's this almost dead yum Oregon dude that grabs one of their legs, and then someone new shoots that guy in the head from above, Fortnite style.
And then we Yeah, we have someone new in a hazmat suit, followed by soldiers.
Yeah, and he says, "Howdy, miss," which is interesting. Howdy. And you lost? Question mark. But the soldiers, one thing that sticks out is they all have the American flag on them, and their Humvee has the American flag.
We are given the impression that the government has arrived.
Yeah. So you're like, oh, what's going on? What is going on? And that's how we start issue 5 with our mail carriers kind of catching us up one more time with some summary pages, right?
Yeah.
So it catches him up. And then we just see he is transformed, but kind of like knocked out, waking back up. He does get up, though. He does make it. But the kids are with these other troops. He's like, but the troops don't just have the American flag, they have the Canadian flag.
And so it leads you to believe you've got like a North American coalition here.
Yeah, and it's also there's one panel where Haley and Henry are saying, like, it's a football. And it's not really, that's just what they call it, the nuclear football. But the dude holding it, where you can see those 2 flags, you can also see the patch on his arm. And the word says innovation. That's all you can see, but it's like light blue light.
Yeah, oh gosh. See, it's amazing. See, I've been through this book once and then twice to sort of check for details. I didn't see that.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you pick up. Okay.
And at the bottom of that page too, because they're talking, they're like, our mom found it. We don't know where it's from. But on that panel, on that small panel where it says we don't know where it's from, you see 2 people fighting over it and like beyond the ruins of a crashed plane that has the American flag on it. So it makes it look like they got it from Air Force One when Air Force One crashed.
Yeah, exactly. Which spoiler alert, I mean, that's ultimately what we find out, correct?
Yeah, it's nuclear. Yeah, it's like nuclear codes, and that's why they were on that plane or whatever.
So they're alluding to that.
Yeah, they're alluding to that. And their tone quickly changes from being like desert saviors to, all right, we got to get out of here. We're just going to grab these kids and go. And apparently they were flanking Tariq and Barney because they zap Barney and knock Tariq out. So they're decent. Like they get a jump on him. You know, and that's not really that easy for that many people to do. We've seen.
No, so they're established as formidable.
Yes, they're established as formidable for sure and organized.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but then so the king is in pursuit because when Bonnie and Goldbeard were talking about him, it was because he was like, we all are going to go out there together and kill out the glowing man. And whether or not that's really what goes down, we don't necessarily, know that that's what they want to happen. That I kind of get the vibe that they're hoping that maybe they can take the king out that way. But
you know what? All I can see when I look at this page, well, there's 2 panels that jump out at me. It's got 3 eyes panel.
Yeah, the organ guy.
Where you have again I love these people unnaturally. You've got the one eye staring out at the reader, and then you've just got his face is messed up, and it's a beautiful piece of business in a gory kind of way. And then you've got the bottom right panel where the king just says excellent. I love that.
Yeah, because now they think that they can find the glowing man. As that glowing man is being taken into like essentially custody to the same location that Haley and Henry are going to, we see a character who becomes very significant later in the ongoing series once the kids are inside. When they're like, the nuclear football went missing years ago when Air Force One went down. How did these children come into possession of it? And it's that general, the female general, who later is like she's like really a good character later in the Geiger ongoing series. She's talking to the vice president, who is President Griffin's vice president. So
yes,
this is the VP to the dude that looks a lot like the guy with the bandages on and the glasses. we've been told maybe it's a little bit of an homage to the Invisible Man.
Could be. Yeah, that's what it seems like.
You know,
we don't see him here though.
Yeah. So clearly, wherever these people are in this area, they have this military installation built, and they are checking Tariq out. They can see he's highly radioactive, but then there's like a full society in here. There's kids, and they're like playing games and all this kind of stuff. Like it's all going to work out, but there's this kind of dark, like what's wrong kind of vibe too.
It's some semblance of normalcy, again, the search for almost the mundane amidst all the terror and chaos that the world has become.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And they're trying to figure out what's going on with Geiger, these two doctor-looking types, and they take out his rods, which makes him transform and just be able to get up and walk away out of his restraints.
It's a good scene. I like it's almost an action movie moment where the guy with the long hair and the beards, I don't think we should have taken those out. And then Geiger has the action line, good observation, that kind of thing.
There's a lot of those good quick one-liners in this bad boy. That's for sure. And it looks like they've intentionally separated Haley and Henry, and they're trying to distract them because they're like Haley talks to their nurse and she says, well, you can see your brother when we get his test results. Here's a cheeseburger so that you don't ask any more questions, essentially, And then Tariq breaks into wherever, or breaks out of where he's being held, essentially.
You think Haley has ever had a cheeseburger at that point?
I doubt it.
Yeah,
or like probably not one like that.
We're seeing a child's first cheeseburger here, ladies and gentlemen. So imagine being tasked with drawing the face that a child has when they eat their first cheeseburger.
And the thoughtfulness that it takes as an artist to do that in this medium.
Exactly, yeah.
Or write it. So it's just great because that level of thoughtfulness and care gets juxtaposed with our comic booky stuff. Like this guy, he depowers himself so he can talk to the guard about the book before knocking the guard out because he needs a new book, and he takes the book.
That's a great character moment. It's obviously got a comedic flair to it, but I thought that was a great character moment for Tariq.
Yeah, absolutely. And this situation devolves quickly because they find out that Henry has leukemia and Haley does not. So they're intent because they have laws, as all those, as a post-apocalyptic society would. They aren't going to do anything to sustain, because their resources are limited, someone with presumably terminal leukemia, because that's what he has.
Right. The line that this woman has, I'm afraid your brother cannot be integrated back into America. Hit. I'm not getting at anything when I say that. I just, for some reason, that line struck me, and I'm not entirely sure why.
Yeah, it is definitely a very specific way to say that. So she says, we wouldn't be so cruel as to leave him to the night crawlers, or worse, the organ people. We're not monsters, Haley. We have a compassionate, life-ending program here. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And it's intense because it's like, wait, so you guys drafted laws about this because you think that it's necessary to make laws so that resources aren't spent on someone who can't survive. And then that brings us back to the beginning when you're like, who knows what people will do, man, under these circumstances.
And again, to the versatility and the variety tonally that you see in Geiger and I guess at Ghost Machine in general, is that it's quickly followed up by a two-headed dog ripping somebody in half, So you jump from the really heavy into the really comic booky, so to speak.
You do. And then, but also the way that he wraps up issues and the way that this issue wraps up, baby, is comic booky, because Tariq gets out, he gets a hold of Haley, and then they're like, oh, we got to go find Henry. But then President Griffin, well, the vice president, you don't see Griffin yet, but somebody comes and the general comes and tells the VP, we have a problem with the children's guardian. And he says, we don't tolerate violence here. Oh, and it's a horrible panel too. Like right before that, you see this panel where Tariq is kicking open a door and there's a person with like they're clearly euthanizing an elderly person. It's just so bad.
Yeah.
So bad.
Well,
But,
I didn't.
right? So subtle and so painful. Like just one panel of, oh man, these people suck.
Boy, and then
the VP says, we don't tolerate violence here. And it's been a while, but send our best soldier to take care of this. Bring the robot online. And then you just see that uniform and it just says Joe.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where like this panel and page was not significant to me until I read Junkyard Joe. And then reading it became more significant to me. But then we get to our 6th issue. And as a reminder, so this in the Ghost Machine bios for Junkyard Joe and all the information, his first appearance is considered to be Geiger number 6. And then there was a second print cover too with this really cool profile Junkyard Joe that was a little hard to find. That's another one that a lot of people like that's out there. It's like a white back. It's not in here. It might be it's in the back. But the cool cover for the A cover for 6 is still really cool. It's just that Junkyard Joe eye lens looking at Geiger. But this was when this issue, man, people don't remember this stuff. People don't realize how long the genesis of the world of the unnamed has been going on. All right. And so I've talked about this page before, and he says, America has always been at war, and in every war, there are men and women rising up to fight for their freedom and their family. Some of the heroes are known and some aren't. They call them the unnamed. And with the first thing we have is the immortal, and it's during the Revolutionary War. So I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that is the first cameo reference to Simon Pure. And this is pre Geiger 80-page giant number 1. But you know what? I don't think Simon's in that panel, but the reference to the immortal. And then in the next setting, the American Civil War, and it's the historian. And in my opinion, it's several Union troops that look like the Northerner fighting rebels. It's maybe not the Northerner. Maybe at that time he hadn't come up with the name the Northerner and he just said the historian. Maybe the historian is someone we have yet to meet. But that's talking about the Northerner, in my opinion. And the third one is talking about the monster, which a lot of us thought was the monster from the Blizzard. It has been specifically stated it is not the monster from the Blizzard. This is a monster that has something to do with D-Day, and that story has not been told yet. And then the robot, which we all know and love.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you look at those first 2 panels knowing what we know now, and it's like, who else could they be referring to? It's like it's Simon Pure, and it's the Northerner, and then, you realize the significance of those 2 characters, and it inevitably makes you wonder, as I did, well, what's the monster?
Right.
What could that be? So, I look forward to a day where we find out who and what the monster is and can look back at this and say, oh, okay.
Yeah. Talk about seeds being planted. And it's those mail carrier narrators that are doing this. And the one of them also says the widow and is about to tell us, but then gets interrupted. And we still don't know what Widow X is, but Widow X is a thing. And the next panel is the Ghost. And that's first Ghost, baby, to be written by Brad Meltzer, the amazing Brad Meltzer, but we don't know exactly when. But, that's what that's talking about.
I'm excited about
5 years ago. Yeah, it'll be really good. But as it continues, we do get we do know they're at NORAD. So like it is a big,
Yes.
big military installation. They're back to that. Then they're even giving him looks like a Sunday. And they're it's so bittersweet because he's like thanking the nice people for helping. And then they obviously got to get him out of there because they find out he's really sick and it's how it's going to be.
There's a cover for, I think, issue 5 that shows, it's a Gary Frank Brad Anderson cover that shows Henry eating what looks like a burger or something, and it captures this same mood really well. I just noticed it as I was flipping through. But yeah, great imagery with the Henry character, really, really heart-wrenching stuff as far as the tonality of what we know is going on with him.
For sure. But Tariq's there. He's going to save them both. He's going to get them out of there. And you can tell protecting a family, protecting children is like a motivating thing for him in this.
Yes. More on that from me in a bit. But yeah, for obvious reasons, that's something that strikes a chord with him clearly, to the point where, we have this page where he just flat out says, I'm not going to let that happen to you or your sister. And then he just flat out says, I'm here for you.
And it's a beautiful panel when they take out the background. And it's just them and him holding him. On that very next page, Ghost Machine fans, after the I'm Here For You, there's a panel that's got a Rob Lee Choom, like a CH, 3 O's, 3 M's. And it's Geiger going through the wall, grabbing one of the troops. And I believe that, as well as the next panel where he throws the guy up into the light, I think those are Dark Knight Returns homages, because I've seen them side by side, and there's a panel just like that in DKR where he goes through the wall and he pulls the SWAT guy, and it's almost identical. Yeah, and then he hits him up into the top. Because I remember somebody posted that online, and it was like, if it's not, it's like really cool, very similar, yeah.
It is very Dark Knight Returns-ish, I'll give you that.
He does that without even being powered up, man. He goes through the damn wall. So
yeah, he's got. I mean, here's the thing: Geiger has a hell of a workout routine, whatever he's doing, because dude's jacked.
Yeah, that's funny. Becky said that before too, because presumably it has to do with his powers or whatever that keeps him so healthy. Because all he eats is beans, so gotta sustain him.
They are the magical fruit. What can you say?
That's true. Even in post-apocalyptia.
There you go.
But they're getting away-ish, it looks like. And then Tariq just gets decked by Junkyard Joe. And man, that first time we saw Junkyard Joe in full profile, I loved that page. I was like, man, that's so cool.
That is a beautiful page. Yeah, even as far as like, it sounds weird to say, but like his walk. He's got like a strong looking walk. And fittingly enough, you've got that poster in the background that says only the strong survive. With, I think that's the vice president on it. Yeah. So yeah, he gets about as strong an entrance as you could possibly hope for.
Yeah, and you can hear the clinkety clink as he walks.
Exactly.
And this is the first time though where it's like beyond the fourth wall. What they do with the Joe thing and the comic strip thing, right? Because you'll find when you read Junkyard Joe, there's actual Junkyard Joe comic book strips. So they're real Junkyard Joe comic book strips. We have seen Junkyard Joe hats and action figures. Now we see the real Junkyard Joe in the future. And when they see him, Tariq and Henry goes, Haley, he looks like Junkyard Joe. And even Tariq is like, the comic book strip? And it's like, yeah, actually, that's the same guy. Now, believe it or not, it's going to blow your mind when you figure out why, when you learn why. But yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's the same guy that was in the backpack in issue 1 in that panel with 3 Sons. And it's a heck of a fight. Like, you can tell this guy was designed to, well, I don't know if it's been said he was designed to fight nuclear powered things. But it really is more so, I believe, that he is powered by nuclear energy, thus he is less vulnerable to nuclear attacks. What do you think?
I tell you what, I like the hard-hitting nature of the fight. For so long, I've been looking for a great fight in my comics, and one to really hit the spot. You know what I mean? And this is a really good one. It feels like they're really beating the crap out of each other for this page, and then of course we've got Tariq turning up the volume when he puts his hands on Joe's head, and the flames are up. He starts to melt, but of course he's invulnerable in that sense. So it's great fight, great confrontation between Geiger and Joe.
And they both do a number on each other. Mm-hmm. And there is one small reference to the custodian. It doesn't mention the custodian, but Vice President says, "I've never seen it active before." And then the general says, "Joe's been reprogrammed to do what needs to be done, Mr. Vice President."
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Are the stories about his creator true? Every last one of them. So whatever, the Vice President apparently at this point has not met the custodian. But ironically, the way that he defeats Joe is by shoving a boron rod into his power core, which shuts it down, I believe. But this is also where it's emphasized that if he doesn't have both rods, he can't contain it, because the one rod being in Joe means the other rod is going to make him explode. And the kids are like, no, it's okay. No, it's okay. And no, it's okay. They won't run away. And like, this was so awesome. I wanted him, man, this was rough. It was rough because I wanted him to stay here. I wanted him to stay here. I wanted him to be able to control it forever. I wanted this to be that turning point, and I wanted this to be his new family. I thought that's where this was going to go,
That's where it felt like it was going to go. I mean, if you wanted this to be a compact, self-contained 6-issue limited series, you could have done that. It wouldn't have been nearly as fun, but you could have had them sort of been his regulators, in that emotional regulators in that sense. But alas, I guess it wasn't to be.
Yeah. And then even there's like a little boy that helps them, but he's basically exposes himself to radiation as a result, giving his life to help them. And that's, heartbreak after heartbreak. We do see a lot of that, but they get away, but then ultimately the king is in pursuit, but it doesn't appear that lasts very long.
No, and it does not go very well for his minds.
No, it doesn't. And then, but so as that's happening, what's the chronology of it? So he takes out the king, which we really see kind of in another page or two. But then after he takes out the king, he goes back to the vehicle, and then they go to Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So when they go back to Mexico, and this is, as we've read the ongoing, this is not the same king that's taken out here. This is the young one, not the one that takes over, the big dude. But so they go to Copper Canyon, Mexico, which it takes 3 days for them to get there. And so there must be a way to like maintain gas one way or another. You must be able to buy gas.
That's a good point. I never thought of that. Maybe he's siphoning gas out of cars or something. Maybe he knows how to do that. That's
true. But they get to this place where there's this cool character named Nurse Red, and it's clearly someplace where he's not supposed to be. And it's called Copper Canyon, Mexico. It looks like it's a fortified place, and he's dropping the kids off there. And it's just such a poetic moment when the kids are like, "Are you going to be okay without us?" And he says, "I'm not going to be without you." And Nurse Red, who clearly knows him somewhat well, says, "You're different." And it's like a beat, and then he just says, "Not really," and drives away.
Yeah, I mean, there's somewhere in the multiverse, there's a version of this book where Haley and Henry stay with him, and he kind of has to be a surrogate parent. And, that would have been a fine book. I think it's more interesting that they're not with him. as we leave this book, because it invites you to wonder, okay, what might happen, especially now that we're 20 issues deep into the 2024 book, given what he's gone through since then, it makes you wonder what they would think of him now. You know what I mean?
Well, and then we get it kind of wrapped up with our narrators again, but they say something cool. He says, like Paul Bunyan, Calamity Jane, and John Henry, Tariq Geiger became a legend. The story about the lengths a man went to protect his family. And that, to me, is like the really early stuff where we later see Davy Crockett coming and Albert Einstein coming and like the heroes through history type of thing, which is, it's a little bit like Valiant. I love Valiant. It's one of the reasons that I really love this unnamed concept and everything. But we ended up back in Vegas and we see Safari Bob for the first time. It looks like he's kind of in charge. His whole concept is interesting, but the Queen's back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is surprising.
It is surprising, and she must have started eating well again because she looks significantly healthier.
Yeah, I mean, at least healthy enough to compose herself enough to sit at a table with a crown on, or
and even more so, she appears to have all her teeth now.
And she says that the way that her son acted, his actions were unsanctioned, and she wants to assure the rest of them of that. So, and this is even before 80-page giant. We learn a few more. We learn about a few more of them then, but in the very end, the last page, what did you think of how the general shows up and says that the President Griffin wants to make arrangements with them?
I think that's it's an interesting invitation to come back for more. And I mean, how could you ask for more? Does she look like Natalie Portman to you?
Oh, that's right.
V for Vendetta era, or like with the shaved head Natalie Portman. Are you getting a Natalie Portman vibe from her? I
forgot that she shaved her head, and then I saw you put some notes about that, and I do remember that now. Yeah, for sure.
A little. She's a little bit more muscular than, dare I say, Miss Natalie Portman is. No disrespect, but great ending cliffhanger. Great ending cliffhanger.
I just like how it says like this is just getting started. This isn't just a short one-off independent whatever. And that's what it even says. And Geiger Volume 1, meaning Volume 2 is coming. But what did you think of the little write-up from Jeff at the end?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on because, I'm of the school of thought that you shouldn't need postscript write-ups like that to sort of hammer your point home in terms of, what the book is about, what the character is about, where you got your ideas from. I'm of the mindset you don't and sometimes shouldn't have that. But I liked this one because Jeff said that the whole thing, this Geiger and perhaps the Ghost Machine universe in and of itself started when his son was born. He had that instinct to protect his son kick in immediately, and that was something that I could really relate to as a parent of two girls myself. So I don't think you need to be a parent to read and appreciate Geiger, but when you put it that way, it really accents things in a nice way, and in a way that sort of drives it home.
You can get the sense of that. It's kind of funny. Every parent that's passionate about their child, which is hopefully every parent, has that moment where they're like, you think about if somebody threatened your kid or if they were in danger, what lengths you would go. And you will always go to any lengths, like even if you believe that somehow the very best thing for them was to keep them safe in that bunker for that long. Like he really believed that. And it was heart-wrenching. It's not just that, like there's so much familial challenging circumstances and pain in this comic on multiple levels that
this one alone,
it hits you hard, man. Like it really does. And you're right. It's why this is like more than a comic to me. You know, I think it's super good.
Definitely.
It's super good.
Really drives it home. And you know what? Is Geiger the flagship book of the Ghost Machine multiverse, Nick, in your opinion? Like, because this was the first like chronological book to come out. Like, this was the first one released. Am I right?
This was yeah, absolutely.
So not just that, but I mean, just by virtue of how the character looks, how much he stands out, how much groundwork this book laid. I mean, is Geiger the flagship book of the Ghost Machine universe?
I think nowadays it would probably be considered that. I think sales wise, it and Rook compete.
Okay.
But I don't think you could call Rook the flagship book.
No.
And especially because it's in the sci-fi verse and there's no other books in that right now. But I would say that the World of the Unnamed is the flagship world of Ghost Machine, which is kind of a cop-out answer, yes. But that means it's Geiger and Redcoat. But that's really just because a lot of people really know Redcoat now. And they're getting into it. So I feel like people associate both of those characters a lot, really, really closely with Ghost Machine for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like Geiger, and this is a weird comparison, but to me, just if for no other reason, just how distinct the character looks. Like, you know, with the glowing skeleton and the weapons, and like you said, the one foot in the superhero territory. He's almost like the Mickey Mouse mascot of the Ghost Machine universe, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Even Jeff, when he's done autographs, has occasionally done little, a Geiger head sketch remark, even though he's not an artist. Like, I think that's a great point. And like the one cover where like they have the thing where he says, "Stare at my nose for 30 seconds without blinking, then look at the ceiling." I think you're right. I think people associate that with Ghost Machine, and it would be fair to call it the flagship, sure. But this world that we see for the first time laid out in this timeline is on the tail end of this thing when we see the Unnamed. And on this list, we have Redcoat, the Northerner, the Monster, Junkyard Joe, American Widow X, First Ghost, the Unknown War, and Geiger. So I saw that and I was like, whoa. Those are all comic books. These guys aren't just doing this and then being like, well, that was fun. We'll see you later. Like this is a bunch of slop, right? But what's cool is after this came 80-page Giant, then came Junkyard Joe 1 through 6. But as you read some of those, at some point, this timeline changes and you begin to see logos and trademarks. So if you look at the Northerner, like now it says the Northerner and it has the Northerner logo and a TM, as opposed to this, which is just like the way it is in this version. So I don't know. I read all that. And I was like, wow, they're laying the groundwork for so much. And this was what got me so excited in the beginning, man, because I knew that it was somebody going and making something of their own again.
Yeah.
Just like people did a long time ago.
And everybody involved with Ghost Machine, I mean, they were under no obligation to do that. I mean, they could have, played in the DC and Marvel universes for the rest of their careers, but instead they kind of took a leap of faith and sort of bet on themselves and their ideas and their creations. And, not only have they been the beneficiaries of it, but we, the readers, have largely been the beneficiaries of it.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think about because after this, there's that 80-page Giant. There's 2 issues of a mini series. There's 20 issues of an ongoing series, and there is some content related to Geiger a little bit in Redcoat and in the Junkyard Joe mini. And it's just like that's a decent catalog of stuff, but it's the kind of thing where if you're big into comics but you haven't gotten into this yet, you could go get all those issues. Like, it's not that hard to pick. Like, you could get all the volumes of all the Unnamed, throw them on your shelf, read them in a weekend, and like jump on this bad boy. It's still fresh enough to do that.
And what I liked about this book that I have in my hand in particular is that they didn't monkey with the numbering. they didn't put this out as Geiger the Glowing Man or whatever, and then start collecting the 2024 stuff as Geiger Volume One, Geiger Volume Two. No, they started us off like on the ground floor here. Geiger Volume One. This is where you start. They didn't play around with the numbering from a marketing standpoint, which I appreciated.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it that way, and I think that their pursuit of the ongoing comic book series, which is something that Jeff has really emphasized, is a great testament for that. Because I mean, even when we've talked to several of them, the whole, well, we're not just going to keep rebooting every whatever so we can get more number one sales thing is a thing. And that's because you want to be reading issue 50 of Geiger, and you want there to be something in it that you only get if you've read what you and I just talked about.
Right.
Because that is what we like. That's what comic book people like. I know that doesn't necessarily mean it's a big Hollywood movie or whatever, or a Netflix show, but it's awesome when you get that reference to a thing, because that's the point of reading something like this for years.
You get a return on your investment, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it, for sure.
And your emotional investment, your intellectual investment, rather than your financial investment.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, this has been wonderful. I'm glad we did this retrospective. We should do something similar for Junkyard Joe when we have another week where we don't have, new books coming out.
I'm game.
But before we wrap up, remind everybody where they can find the amazing and hilarious short-form video reviews that are the Comic Book Chronicles.
Comic Book Chronicles on TikTok, and then Comic Book Chronicles Rob on YouTube and Instagram. There are other accounts on places like Blue Sky and Facebook, etc., but those three are the main ones.
And if you want to find all of our other content, you can do that by going to www.ghostmachinefans.com, where you'll find all of our social media platforms. Discord is on there. The invites on Instagram too, and on the Reddit platform. All the good stuff is there. If you're on Facebook, make sure to check out the Ghost Machine Comics Fans Facebook group too.
And thanks so much for joining us tonight on the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.
Throwback Podcast.